and I'm back with a new lesson on the usage of words like under, below, beneath and underneath. Well, all these words sound quite similar, don't they? Well, they do, and yeah, their meanings are quite similar, but they are used in quite different contexts. Now, what does all these three words mean? When I refer to words like under, below, beneath and underneath, I am talking about, I'm referring to things that are, down, in the downward position. So of course, when I talk about under, below, I'm talking about anything that is down there. But let's see where we can use these words and in how many contexts we can use it in. Okay, the first one is the word under. Now, the first context in which you will use the word under is to talk about something that is below a three-dimensional object. So we have an example, the sentence which is, they sat under a tree. Now remember, I said below a three-dimensional object. So anything under a three-dimensional object like a tree, for example, then I use the word under. So if I want to say, me and my friend, we sat under a tree, which is a three-dimensional object, then I use the word under. For example, I could have a three-dimensional object like a table. I can say that the book was under the table. Or I could say that the cat was sleeping under the chair again being a three-dimensional object. Now, I can also use the word under when I want to talk about layers of something. So if I want to say that, something is under a layer. So for example, I have a sentence like, I have a t-shirt under my jacket. So this is a shirt. Now imagine if I was wearing a jacket on top of it. I could say that I have a shirt under my jacket because I am talking about layers of something. Okay, so we use under also when we're talking about layers. And then I could use under also when I'm talking about numbers. So I will say, I can raise under $15,000, or I can do it under 7 hours. So if I'm talking about time, which is also numbers, money, which is again numbers, I will use the word under. Okay, so I was under 17 when I learned to drive. That's again when you use the word under. And the last context where you use the word under is to talk about a state of mental well-being or ill-being. So it talks about your mental state. So I can say that this group is under a lot of stress. Now, my mental state in this case is stress. I can say that I was under a lot of pressure. So we're talking about a mental state, and that is when I use the word under. So here please notice that unlike these, the under used out here is talking about a mental situation, a mental state, and not a physical state like these three sentences are. Okay? Now we will deal with the next word, which is below, and see what context they can be used in. As I said, the word below can also be used in different contexts. So let's see the different ways in which we can use the word below. Let's look at our first sentence, which is the red photo is below the black one. Now, why do I use below in this context? I'll help you understand this by means of a diagram. Okay. Now, imagine this is my wall or a blackboard, if you may. Now, this context in which I use below talks about comparing the level of one thing against the other, provided both of them are on the same plane. Okay, so as I said, imagine that this is my blackboard, or maybe this is my wall, this square out here. Okay, so I will draw a red photo. Okay, and now we will have a black photo. Okay, well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out which one is up there and which one is down. The sentence says that the red photo is below the black one, and that is true. But why do I use the word below and not under? Because I'm talking about two things which are on one plane surface. So if both these photos were on the blackboard, I would say the red photo is below the black one. If this was on a wall, I would again say the red photo is below the black one. But suppose I have a table here and the black photo is somewhere here, but the red photo is lying somewhere here. Could I say the red photo is below the black one? No, I will then use the word under, because when I explained under, I clearly mentioned that anything that is, under a three-dimensional object will always have an under used in it. But when I'm talking about a plane surface and I'm comparing the levels of two things, it is always the word below. Okay, then let's move on to the next sentence, which is the temperature has dropped below freezing point. So here again, I use the word below when I want to talk about the level of temperature. So I've talked about the level of temperature being below freezing point. Maybe I want to talk about the level, the sea level. So I can say that the diver went 100 feet below sea level. That's quite possible. I could also talk about, the level of altitude. So I can, that is the height, of course, and I can say the plane lost control and went immediately 100 feet, below 100 altitude below. So I'm talking about here the level of temperature, the sea level, and the level of altitude. And then you have the last context where you use below when I talk about things that are mentioned later. So let's see a sentence which is read the instructions below, not under. Read the instructions below before you start. Now, when I say I use the word below when I'm talking about things that happen later or are mentioned later, I am saying that I use below because I know there are certain things that I need to, consider, certain things that I need to read before I start my next action. So maybe I'm sitting in an exam and I've got to write, give the exam. But I need to consider things that are mentioned at, a later stage. So before I start my exam, I have to read the instructions which are mentioned after a page or maybe after 2 pages before I start doing something. Okay, so now that we've learned below, let's talk about the other 2 words which are beneath and underneath. Alright, now let's look at the last 2 pair of words, which is beneath and underneath, and see how they are used. The first sentence says they slept beneath the blankets. So the first context in which I use the word beneath is talking about being covered by something. So now you are sleeping beneath the blankets. So what I'm actually saying is I am being covered by the blankets. Maybe I could also say that she hid beneath the water. She was beneath the surface of the water. So I wanted to hide from somebody looking at me. I wanted to be covered by the surface of the water. So I just go dip in and I'm covered by the surface of water. So that is nothing but being covered by something. Moving on to the next context, we talk about using the word beneath when we are talking about a person's emotions, a person's feelings, or maybe their actions. So a sentence like this which goes, beneath it all, he still loves her. So maybe we're talking about a couple who, gets into a lot of arguments, a lot of petty fights, but beneath it all, which means beneath all the emotions, the feelings, the drama, they still love each other. So we're talking about beneath because we're talking about a person's feelings, his emotions, and all the drama in between. And then you have a sentence like, she treats people as if they are beneath her. Now here the word beneath talks about people of a low social position or someone you want to talk about when you find them very disgusting. I could say something like, the guy is offensive. He is completely beneath me. That is a very high-handed way of saying it. But we talk about people being beneath us when we're talking about people who have a low social position compared to us. And we talk about people who we don't like, who we find very disgusting, very offensive. So apparently somebody treats people as if they are beneath her. So that's how the word beneath is used in these 3 main ways. And then the last word underneath is simply an exaggeration of the word under. So it is the word under, but it is exaggerated. Which means I could use underneath and under, I can replace them with one another. But why do I use the word underneath, sometimes? A sentence like, the ball was underneath the sofa. Could I say the ball was under the sofa? Yes, I could, because we're talking about 3-dimensional objects. So when I talk about 3-dimensional objects, you know that I can use the word under, but underneath is more exaggerated because I want to give more expression, or just emote, or talk about it in a more casual way. So an emotive way of saying something. So maybe I was looking for the ball all over and then I find it underneath the sofa. So somebody asks me, where did you find the ball? I said the ball was underneath the sofa. So I am saying that in a more exaggerated way, and therefore I use the word underneath instead of under, because under is also fine. So that's it for the lesson on the usage of the word under, below, underneath and beneath. I hope you found it very useful. Do drop in your comments. I'll be back with some more lessons. Until then, this is me saying